Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Lori Putnam, and I'm the guest host for the week while Eric is away. But today, my guest is Bryan Mark Taylor. Welcome, Bryan. What are you going to do for us today?
Well, I'm going to paint a piece of bread, and I know that's a very humble subject, but I think that there's so much that we can learn from it's very simple, just because of the way it's lit. So that's what we're doing today.
Awesome. I've always wanted to see you do one of those, so this is great. I'm excited. So let's get the show started.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rhoads. Now, here's your host, Eric Rhoads.
Hi again. Obviously, I am not Eric Rhoads. My name is Lori Putnam, and I'm your host for the entire week. Today's guest is Bryan Mark Taylor, who's going to be showing us his still life painting secrets. Okay, Bryan, take it away.
All right. Okay, so does the view look okay? Just want to make sure are we close enough up, and can you see the subject all right?
We can see the subject, we can see a little of your mixing area, and we can see the surface. So, and I know
Excellent.
You have to be somewhere, so unless we get complaints, I say we go for it.
Okay, sounds good. That sounds great. Well, part of it, I wanted to show a little bit of the setup, because you can see there's the light here, and then I have basically things that you have almost around the house. I don't want to be too complicated for this. I want to make it kind of universal, where everybody has kind of the materials to set something up like this. So it's just a simple bulb that has kind of a cool natural daylight to it that I put in this can right here. And then I have just pieces of black paper that I've taped on in various angles to kind of direct the light where I want it. And so it's just a very simple kind of setup. A lot of people have asked me about what kind of light I'm using, and it's not anything that's something you can't just find at your local hardware store. But it is a kind of a floodlight shape, so it has a nice direct light quality to it. And I just put it on a full brightness. I actually, for painting still life, I like to have kind of a strong light and shadow pattern, and that's kind of what I've done here with the piece of bread, is that there is a strong sense of light. Now I can move the light a little bit here if I want to get just a little bit different pattern, and that's something that's the most interesting part of this of the painting process, is how you light it. It's not necessarily the object itself, but the way you light it that makes it work. And so I'm looking at a ratio of light and shadow. Is the majority in the shadow, or is the majority in the light? And in this case, I have the majority of the bread is in shadow, and it's kind of rimmed with light. And you're going to do the same thing with plein air painting. You're going to select a scene, and it either needs to be majority shadow or majority light, or else it's going to be a little bit too choppy. So with that said, we'll just kind of get started here.
So do you eat this bread afterward?
Well, this in particular piece, I never got around to painting it, and so it is very dry. But usually I do like to do that. I know the kids never, whenever we get some bread, because we have a lot of people that are bread makers around us, and they know that I love painting bread, and so, you know, very often we'll get a loaf here or there, you know, somebody that made it. And thing is, the kids know that they can't eat it. They always have to ask, is Dad going to paint this first? And usually that's the case, or at least half of it.
That's funny.
So they did eat half of this, but we've got the other half here.
That's funny.
So I just got a nice simple shape to start with. And I'm not necessarily copying exactly what I see. You can see that the canvas here is close to the subject, but I actually prefer to paint not like site size where it's right next to each other. I like to go a distance, even though I paint it almost life size. I prefer to have it a little a distance because I love to kind of have a little bit of an atmosphere to the work. You know, that's something that translates with landscape painting. And if I'm too literal with it, then I think it kind of loses a touch of the kind of the mood that it can have with the light. And so I don't like to have it right next door. And I know there's a lot of artists successfully, you know, do it in more of a site size sort of way, but I prefer to kind of design the piece rather than just copy it straight up. Right now I'm just kind of getting, you know, that area where this is kind of the shadow shape there. Yeah. And it's, again, this is a simple subject in a lot of ways, but it's also very complex. You know, a lot of people, when I've taught a workshop, painted it and thought, oh man, I thought that would be a lot easier to do. But
well,
you know, there is,
you know, the fact that you're doing that where you've got the light and shadow already very evident. I mean, I can see how that translates into plein air painting for sure, because the light's always moving. I mean, you're in a situation, it's going to stay there, but in plein air, you want to get that pattern down just as quickly as you can.
Absolutely, because this will change over time, right? And the thing I found, you know, painting this subject is great because one, it doesn't move, right? But it can help us understand how rocks are painted in plein air.
Oh.
Right? So you have all the little planes and angles that are going on in the bread. So and it can help you understand like how clouds are done. It's a light object, and so there's a lot of reflected light, and there's you know, coolness from above, warmth from below that happens. So the world is all right in here in terms of what we need to do as plein air painters. If, you know, painting trees or whatever, if we want to have that quality of light and that kind of solid shape. And so this, it may seem a little counterintuitive to do this, but it really is a great exercise to help you in your plein air work.
That's fabulous. Just such a fabulous thing to do in a controlled setting and get you ready for all of that chaos that goes on when you're out there. Yeah.
And all this, right? All of this is very, you know, chaotic, and you have to kind of design it. And that's the same thing with, you know, what's really hard about painting foliage, for instance, is you have to find a method to kind of tackle its complexity without painting every little leaf. And, you know, same here, without painting every single little fold exactly as I'm seeing it here. How do I suggest it in a way that's interesting and beautiful? So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing here. So I've just drawn that first, then we'll grab a little bit bigger brush. All these brushes they're golden Taklon hair brushes.
And at some point, people want to know a little bit about your color palette. I know we can't see all of that all at once, and you actually stand somewhere, but at least if you could talk about it at some point, that'd be great, okay? Awesome.
I can put it, and so basically I have titanium white, cad yellow light, yellow ochre, cad orange, cad yellow medium, cad red, alizarin permanent. This is a little bit of, this is randomly from I'm probably going to dip into this though. This is raw umber. Then we have burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, and a little bit of a phthalo green. I may or may not use some of this. We'll see. I might throw a little bit in. And basically what that phthalo green will do is it will balance out all of these reds, because it's going to be more warm, creamy, you know, buttery, heavy. And then having a little bit of that could help just balance that off a little bit. So my palette changes. Yeah, exactly. My palette changes depending on what I do, you know, what I'm painting. But this is fairly typical of kind of the basic colors that I usually have on a palette.
Okay, and I see you're using one of your Strata easels, of course.
Yes, yeah, of course, of course. This is one of our royal red easels, and we used it. It was like a 10th anniversary edition, so it was just kind of a limited edition. We did. It was kind of fun. Just do a different color.
Everybody loves your Strata challenge so much at the beginning of the year. You know, it's fabulous that you do that every year.
Well, that's kind of how this whole bread thing kind of evolved from that. We were doing the challenge through COVID, and everybody was learning how to make bread, and so I thought, hey, I was doing the same thing, and I thought, well, let's try and paint one of these, and that's kind of how that whole thing started. I've painted quite a few over the years now. Okay, I'm looking for kind of a little neutral here, a neutral shadow. It's the value level is somewhere kind of mid-tone, number 5. I don't want to go, obviously I don't want to go dark with this. I want to have a lot of luminosity in here, and so I think the temptation is to go fairly dark with it, because you see this really high contrast in your subject. Mm-hmm. But I think one thing to get a greater luminosity in your work is in these shadow areas, and this is something Lori, you do really well, is you keep things higher key, and just that higher key. It's interesting that less contrast between values, between light and shadow, will actually give better sense of light than if you have a higher contrast. It's a little counterintuitive, but it is the case.
And I think if you paint in plein air a lot, you're true to the study of it, it's rare that those shadows are very dark out there. So this is great that you're. I'm imagining this as a rock. I'm so glad you pointed that out. Yeah.
Well, and you're gonna, this is the rock on the shadow side. Especially if you're painting something like granite. Granite is a fairly light rock, and it's gonna be much lighter. But even if you're painting, you're in Hawaii and you're painting lava rock, I would still be careful not going, even though that rock is very dark, at a distance with the atmosphere between you and the subject, you're going to actually, it's going to lighten that value. So it's not going to be black, even though you might have that initial tendency to paint it. And so sometimes I'll get, something like even this brush, right? This is dark, and I'll hold that up and compare the value of that of the shadow to it, and it's always lighter, obviously. So I'm just mixing, not the same tone everywhere. I'm doing slight variations with it as I'm moving along. I am throwing a little bit of that green, like I mentioned, and I know that could make if you go too bright with it, it can make the bread look moldy. So you got to be careful with that. But
yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. So over here on this end, there's some warmth because the light actually, the bread's not solid, and as the light passes through the crust here, it's actually passing through and acting like a little bit of a stained glass window into here, and then causes this to heat up and to glow a little bit. So we get a little bit of warmth on this end, just warming that up with a bit of the orange or some of the red.
Brian, do you mind if I ask you a question from the audience?
Sure.
Somebody says, can you not use artificial lighting if you place the bread being lit by a candle in order to get the candle's ambient glow?
Oh, absolutely.
You could light it anyway, right?
Yeah. Any way you want to. A candle is great. It's just a different type of light, And I'm using a little bit cooler light, which will create a certain effect. And then obviously candle light will be much, much warmer. I'm in the process of building a studio, and Lori, you know what that's like. What enormous pain that is.
Yeah.
The one thing that's really great about it, right, is you truly get to control all of the light in it, and where you decide to put windows and stuff like that. And so one of the things I'm very much looking forward to is to have that natural north light, big north light windows, and there's just the soft beauty to that light. And so one thing I'm doing with the studio is that there's actually windows on all 4 sides, and I know that's not typical, for a studio, especially to have it on the south side. But I'm going to use that as well because it's a certain type of light, a very strong beam of light that I can have for certain still life subjects. And so I want to have that as an option.
You know, we have that here as well, and I just have, they're very far up, you know, they're high, and I just have, they're on a remote control blind, so I can adjust them. And you're right, it's a totally different kind of light that's great for when you're working from life like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it, you know, each type of light, just like, you know, as plein air painters, we don't necessarily paint only in one type of light. We kind of like a variety. I know I have my preference. I actually prefer to, I love overcast light because it's more even and it's more like a still life thing, because it's just, you know, good for a longer amount of time. I think it's easier to paint in that type of light. But, you know, we also love painting in sunset and sunrise and everything in between.
You and I have painted a quick draw in the rain at Plein Air Easton together.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah.
Long time ago.
How long has that been? Has it been 10
forever.
years?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of plein air events. I think that was one of my, because I remember doing like 4 in a row, and that was like number 4.
Yeah.
And got a little burnt out.
Yeah.
I do enjoy it though, and I do miss like all the artists that, you know, you get to know over the years, because, you know, you would see, you know, certain people over time, and I miss that a lot.
Okay, I have another question if you don't mind.
Okay.
What color family is the shadow section you just did? I'm amazed at how you can discern subtle and muted color.
Okay, yeah. So it is a little bit tricky, right? But the family is kind of, I would say ochre, kind of a yellow ochre family, but then it's muted with some umbers and some blues to kind of cool it down, but not too cool. So this is a very color to capture, and I know this is the trickiest one. Like, this light is fairly easy to figure out, but this is really tough, and that's what gets a lot of people. So basically what I did is I mixed. Can you see this? Can you see my palette okay?
You can see about half of your palette. I can see where you're painting right now, or
Okay,
you're mixing
perfect.
right now.
Yeah, so I'll mix up here more so that everybody can see that better. I just didn't want to be too far away that you can't see the canvas. So
yeah,
what I did is I took yellow ochre, and then I added add a little bit of ultramarine blue to it, and then some of the burnt sienna, and so I get a little bit of a kind of a brownish gray, and so that's kind of where I'm starting. The blue kind of neutralizes and keeps it from becoming too warm, and so I'm modifying it slightly, like I said, with a little bit of the green, with some of a little bit of the violet and red, because a lot of these little colors in that bounce light, that's what's going to create. That's the kind of the beauty of the painting, is when you look into the bread and see all these subtle colors.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too, because I'm seeing all those subtle colors, but you're not in there painting every little fleck of bread. You know,
No.
It's beautiful.
Right. Yeah, just it's all about that suggestion, and again, I go back to the idea that I prefer to have to be a little more distant from my subject, so that, you know, it's softer. It's almost like my eyes blur it just a little bit, you know, as I'm squinting down. So that's another thing. I mean, I know we talk about that a lot, right? Is the importance of squinting and just seeing the kind of the big shapes, and that's what I'm doing here as well. Just kind of squinting a little bit, seeing it in a softer way. So I'm going to come here and throw in a little bit more of a dark, and so that dark will actually make this feel much lighter. I know, and I typically paint without having any sort of toned canvas. It just gives it a little bit more of a cleaner feel when it's not toned, where everything is kind of directly placed on. That's just a personal preference for this type of subject. There are times when I do put a wash across it, but that's more rare. When I do something like that, I kind of prefer to, if I have to tone an area, I kind of tone it at that spot, and in very specific ways. I just typically don't do like a whole wash across the whole thing. That's not something I used to do that when I was younger, but I'm just more specific and maybe more deliberate about what I want right from the get-go, and so I just kind of go in that direction.
Yeah. Do you, I mean, other than those rare occasions where you might decide to wash part of it with something for whatever reason, do you generally paint the same process for every painting, or do you have different ways of painting different subjects?
Yeah, I do. I mean, this is more maybe more of an approach to still life. There is a bit more of because the design and the composition is relatively simple, I don't have to kind of do some guesswork. But if like it's a plein air painting and I'm not quite sure the shape or the size of this rock, then I need to have some more looser strokes to kind of build in the composition and kind of feel my way through it. So it is a little bit different process. Especially with a cityscape, I do a lot of moving things around. You know, none of the buildings are going to be exactly as I see them, or cars or any of that stuff. Everything gets moved around. And so I'm kind of looser at the beginning to kind of, you know, shove the shapes around until I kind of get the feel that I want.
I love your cityscapes. They're so amazing.
Well, thank you. It's you know, I really enjoy painting pattern, like things that have complex patterns and, you know, kind of a certain geometry to it. I mean, that's what fascinates me about this is, you know, just these little patterns that are all within the bread. And the same thing with a cityscape is similar to that, is there's, you know, patterns of buildings and textures and things like that. And that's something I enjoy painting. You know, and as you're trying to find your way in your painting and learning, you're just going to see that you gravitate towards certain things more than others.
Yeah.
All right, so now I'm going to start throwing in the light. Now I'm not want the background in because I want to come in and cut into the shape with the background. That creates a very specific certain kind of edge. And so there's kind of this reason, it's a bit of a chess match where, you know, with the chess pieces, you open a certain way. You know, first moves will determine what happens in moves later down the line. And so I want to make sure that I'm, you know, putting certain moves first. And this is through many years of painting and many paintings. I'm just kind of showing you one of the methods that I really, you know, kind of gravitate towards. And because it creates certain types of edges, certain types of movement in the brushwork and a freshness to it that I like. So that's why I'm doing it the way I'm doing it. There's always method to the madness, right? This keeps the strokes really fresh too. Like you can see I'm not modifying a ton of things that much, you know, placing it and leaving it. So there's a, you know, the certain amount of the confidence that comes with this kind of a technique.
Well, and that's the thing too about, you know, learning just the craft, the skill, and believing in what you're about to do before you do it, because that confidence shows. And then you look, you know, you look at people's work and you can tell it. You can tell that they have been intentional in what they've done, no matter how loosely they paint. It looks intentional, not just messy and sloppy.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's kind of that idea where you have like a maybe a loose brush stroke, but a tight mind. I mean, there's a lot of focus and there's a lot of intention, and like every one of these colors that I'm mixing are very intentional, and and thoughtful. Like this one, for instance, here, it's not white. I mean, you can see that it's a deeper value than the white behind it. And I'm reserving the potential white for a few highlights here at the end. And so it's just like I want to keep off the really darks on this side of things. I want to keep off the bright whites on this side so that I can use them in strategic places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard people talk about that reserve before, and I'm glad that you bring it up because a lot of times, I see painters who working in plein air let's say, well, go ahead and you were talking about luminosity versus a lot of contrast. They'll go ahead and put in something really, really dark for the shadow, and then everything they paint, they're judging it off of that really dark shadow, and it's not really all that dark, and so they come in and their paintings are super, super dark.
Yeah,
even the lights,
Yeah, you bring it in and it's just so dark that it's not working.
Yeah.
And so I think, in general, if you're kind of going out in plein air for the first time, try and lighten your areas, lighten them up.
Just give it a try, right?
Yeah, and then ironically though, if it's a white object, a white house, it's interesting how when you're just beginning, a lot of times you're going to paint that too light, that shadow part too, because you're going to see white and you're going to say that's white, even though it's a shadow. It needs to be more in the mid-tone.
Right. People are commenting, want you to know how much they love your paintings and your teaching and all of those things. I just want you to know that.
Oh.
Somebody wants to know, to keep the bread in the center from looking hollowed out like a bread bowl, do you ever capture the dough more filled in?
Yes, I do. So here there's going to be a couple of, I start with that mid-tone, then I'm going to push it out a little bit, and there's going to be, we even have a fleck or two of the light that's going to kind of come in.
Yeah.
But I do like, there is a design element to it. I don't want this to get too busy here, right? So there's just kind of a balance to, I'll kind of react to it and just relate to it and see, is this going to have, how much detail can it hold without becoming too busy? So that's the trick and the challenge, right? Is, things can become really busy really quickly. So there's just that balance. Yeah,
that's the challenge too. I think it's really very difficult to paint something and leave it intentionally loose and not paint every little detail. Somebody asks if it's okay to give you this question. Somebody says, can you talk about the shadow being cool off of a warm object and warm shadow from a cool object? This concept has helped my students so much. That's from Angie Woods.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously that, warm light, cool shadows, cool light, warm shadows. We have a slightly cool light here, but it's hitting a warm object. So it's not like cold and hot, it's not like orange and blue that we're here. It's all relative, right? And so there's relative, it's just, a little bit cooler in certain areas, a little bit warmer in others. So for instance, I'm looking along this shadow area, and then again, this area right here is the warmest part of that shadow, and then it cools down over in here, and then right here as this hits, and there's a light reflecting back in here, it lightens up and warms up slightly in this area. So that's a lot.
It really looks fabulous. Really looks fabulous.
There's a lot to notice right in that. And just, again, like I say, there's the whole world of light and shadow is just in this simple object. So here, what I'm going to do, let me mix up in this area so you can see it on camera. I'm going to start mixing the darker value. So sitting underneath, obviously, is that dark. And those darks help objects stand up, whether it's a tree, a rock, whatever. You always want to find those occlusion shadows, basically, is what this is down here. And then we've got a bit of the cast shadow that's slightly warmer and lighter. It might not show up in the camera, but there is a little difference between here and here. But that, that is just a critical little juncture there that the whole painting's not going to read well if I don't have that. Because here, even though the cloth that I have, that I'm painting, is black, it's being lit. And it's going to have a lighter value to it, a kind of a gray. So I want to make sure and paint it with that lighter tone.
That suddenly made that bread look like it was actually sitting on that surface. That's great.
Yeah, so that's an important part. And again, if I made these shadows in here are too dark, then this dark underneath wouldn't have that same level of power that it needs to have. So that's why we need to reserve areas so that when you have a dark, then it makes an impact.
How does that value that you're painting now, how does that compare to the shadow inside the hollow out piece of bread?
Well, we can throw a little bit in there, and you can see it's very close.
Wow.
But the reason why this reads as light and that reads as shadow is because of the relationship we've set up. It's because of this contrast makes it part of this family, and this, because it relates to this shadow here, becomes part of a different object, different family. So it's interesting how you can use a similar value, one in the light, one in the shadow, and have them read different ways.
I think that's just such a fabulous point that people don't often make, that especially in a setting like this, you're not talking about, miles and miles and miles of atmospheric perspective. You're not talking about, a lot of things that matter in some of the rules that we hear. And it's what makes this so luminous is how closely you're able to get those values.
Yes.
Instead of it having to be such a huge jump to that light.
Yes, yeah, and that's exactly right. And I think the more we can paint in a closer value range, I think we can get more color in our work. We can get more, sense of light, luminosity. And so it's just an interesting, you look at the old master paintings, and if you bring a white card into the museum, or you just get a white business card or something and compare it to all the whites in the painting, they're not going to be as bright, right?
Yeah, I often am walking through a museum, and I'm looking, through the little hole I make with my circle with my fingers, and looking at the value and the color, all of that. Yeah,
and it's important to study. That's when I go to a museum. It's really, I look at one of the things I look at most, in a painting that I admire or whatever, is just looking at the values. Because a lot of times just the print will never replicate what you're truly seeing in the painting, in person. And that's that's something that, if you're going to go see an original work, just really study what are those exact values. And if you can actually do some study at the museum, even better, because then you can kind of copy the values of what the master did with his or her piece. Okay, so now I'm throwing in the background. You can just see how that background helps this whole thing to pop out, right? And it's, in some ways, it's kind of a two-value painting. And if I can get away with a generally speaking two-value painting, it's going to just read stronger. Basically in, a general light and a general shadow. And I know I'm oversimplifying here, but a lot of times if I can kind of keep it into two large families, I feel that it'll be stronger. It'll read in a stronger way. So
Yeah.
that's my goal here. Now I'm making a little bit of a transition from this lighter to a bit of a darker tone on this edge. And part of that, I'm observing that to some degree, but I'm also seeing that this area is, closest to the light source and getting hit by the light. And so by going a little bit darker back here, I can emphasize and make this even feel lighter. So it is approaching the value of the shadow here. So you can see it's very similar.
Wow. It's amazing.
So it's a little bit of a trick. I think you see this with the old master portraits, where they use the background values to help emphasize parts of the face. Rembrandt will do that all the time, where on the shadow side of the face, he'll go a little bit lighter here, and on the light side, a little bit darker here to emphasize those two areas. And those are ways to conserve or to get the most out of your values.
So somebody's just asking a technical question. Are you mixing anything in your paint? Are you painting straight out of the tube? A little bit about your supplies there.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, just straight out of the tube. So it's basically what I'm touching the 𝗬𝗠𝗄 a little bit, and that's about it. So it's fairly, it's more about just observation and putting a stroke and leaving it, rather than any sort of fancy, hymns or any of that stuff. As a young art student, I was always trying to think that, there's some fancy medium that's going to make my painting so much better. And I'm still never found it. So I just found that just the observation of the paint has been more important over time. So that's what I kind of more my belief now, is that you're not going to find the secret Marge medium or any of that stuff.
So somebody is they're talking about how great this is, how great your teaching is. Do you still teach workshops?
Okay, so great question. I don't have anything listed at the moment. I will, as soon as I get my studio done, I will be starting to teach workshops again, and so I'm looking forward to that. I'll have a space to do it, and I'll be doing some in the future. I've done like one or two in the last 5 years, so I haven't done a lot, but I'm getting back to wanting to do some teaching. I just had to, you kind of have to step back every once in a while. I think we talked about this, where sometimes you just need to focus on your work and you just kind of need to catch your breath a little bit. Yeah. But then you start getting lonely in your studio, and you're like, I need to talk to someone.
That's right. I'm supposed to let you know that we're about 8 minutes, 7 minutes.
Okay. Well, I will at least get this covered, if not anything else. So hopefully that gives people an idea. Everything else right here, beyond what I'm painting with this kind of initial layer is just kind of the gravy on top, where I modify edges and just make sure things have the nuance that I want to have. So I went a little
enjoying you put the paint down. It just looks so, I don't know, it's inviting watching you put this paint down.
Well, I'm using a very smooth surface. I'm using a kind of a really smooth gessoed panel, and so it goes on pretty easily. There's not a lot of drag to it.
Yeah.
I find that's also, just as much as I paint, I need to have I want to have less drag on it because it's just easier on my arm over time. And I even wear, I mean, you can see here I have a compression sleeve that I wear just to keep everything, my tendons in good shape. Because I paint so much that, you know, you got to kind of take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And make sure that, you know, you stay ironically injury free. Because in the past I've had, you know, gotten a little bit of tennis elbow or whatever you want to call it from, you know, just a lot of painting.
So somebody wants to know if you have time. I don't want to interrupt too much, but if you would mind talking a little bit about edges, hard edges, soft edges.
Oh, sure.
And,
okay.
And also maybe a little bit about the brushes that you're using.
Okay. All right. So well, as far as the brushes I'm using, these are actually 𝗬𝗏 makes these brushes. They are a golden Taklon brush, and I really like the kind of softness to them. They have kind of like a red sable feel to it, which gives a wide range of kind of expression. And as far as the edges go, I will go along here and maybe let me just throw the rest of this color on here so it doesn't bug me, and then I can start working on a little here.
Yeah, we'd rather watch you paint than.
Okay, a lot of times I do use my finger to you know, soften edges and things like that. You can see here I've somebody tried to call. Did that cut out?
Yeah, it cut out there for a second.
Okay. So what I'm trying to do here is soften. I can soften a little bit of that edge. You know, this is all wet and wet paint, and so I have some areas that's really sharp, and that's why I like to paint the background in second, 𝗦𝗏𝗰𝗍, because this type of edge that I can get here can only be achieved by basically having a dry surface that you put, you know, one initial application of wet paint on. So in my mind, there's no other way than the method I just kind of showed you to create some of these edges. And so with every technique, it has certain limitations, and it's in the limitations that allow you to create, you know, certain beautiful effects. So I've softened a little bit of that edge there too. See, this edge I want to have sharp because I want this to come forward. Edges within the shadow here are going to be softer, and so they can recess. So if I put in any sort of, I'll throw in a little bit of a dark accent. I know we're close to out of time here, but
a couple of minutes.
couple of minutes. So if I throw a little bit of a darker tone in here, I don't go too dark, and I want to keep that edge kind of softer. So it's kind of the way I'm stroking it too, is I'm putting pressure and lifting up. Can start to create some of these softer little nuances that are going on in the depth there. So here there's a couple of areas that are going to catch the light. Again, I don't want it too busy, too many of them. So I got to be careful with that. And there's a little bit of play back and forth until I find kind of the right balance.
Mm-hmm. It looks fabulous.
Oh, I'm glad it's coming out okay. All right, so here on this side, we've got a little bit more of that shadow of the edge of the bread. And so that's going to melt somewhat into the background. And the way I'm going to distinguish between one side or the bread and the background is that the bread will be just a little bit warmer color temperature. And so I'm just using the color temperature rather than value to make that little separation.
So we've got about 3 minutes, Bryan. I'm sorry.
All right. No, that's all right. Any one final question?
Well, you know, everybody's saying they're hungry now from watching you paint this. Somebody's wondering about how any of this would translate into gouache. And, you know, it's just shapes, right?
Yeah, shapes and values, right, and observations. But this, yeah, absolutely with gouache, it would, it translates really well.
Do you ever use gouache?
I do on occasion. I just prefer oil. You know, I part of it is there's certain type of edges and things that I can get with oil that I can't get with any other medium. But I mean, obviously gouache has a beautiful just quality to it. And I do it on occasion, but it's more just for fun. It's a great kit to take plein air because it's a little bit less equipment heavy, you know, and you can have a little kind of tiny setup for gouache. And so, you know, if I'm traveling into some, you know, developing world countries, I'll bring a little gouache kit just in case I'm out in the jungle somewhere and need to have a lighter setup. But more often than not, I'll bring all my oils.
Did you paint any while we were, Bryan and I were both in Spain in August. Did you get to paint any while you were there?
I did, yeah. And I'm working on a large commission of a piece in kind of northern Spain.
Oh, that's fabulous.
That's what I'm working on right now, and kind of behind the scenes. All right. Well, I think we're probably about at the end here, huh?
I love how you just left everything so simple in the cloth itself. You know, you're not trying to get all the little folds in the cloth. It's not about that. It's about the bread.
Yes.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah. Reduce that. Just make it more atmospheric again, and then just go into the textures there. So I've thrown a little bit of white, just a couple highlight, and it's going to be kind of residing here like I talked about, and then I will, you know, do a few little touches here and there. But hopefully that gives you an idea of how this thing comes together.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much again, Bryan. That was a fabulous, fabulous demo. People, don't forget to go to his website at bryanmarktaylor.com and look at the rest of his fabulous work there. Thank you for joining today. I just want to thank you personally, Bryan. It was lovely to have you here.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It's been fun to connect, and you know, I need to get out more and see more of the people that I love and care about. So thank you so much, Lori.
Yeah, it's difficult to have to go to Spain to see each other, isn't it? Okay, so I want everybody to tune in tomorrow, grab a cup of tea, and join us tomorrow. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a fabulous day.